I love this story. Mildred Dalton Manning, an Army nurse, was held captive for almost 3 years in the Philippines. And she was the last known female military prisoner of war from World War II. She died last March. She was 98. Mrs. Manning, then known as Millie Dalton of Georgia, joined the Army Nurse Corps in 1939 and landed in Manila in October of 1945. 6 weeks later, Japanese forces attacked Pearl Harbor and also bombed the U.S. air base near Manila. The Battle of the Philippines raged on for months, and Mrs. Manning was one of about 100 military nurses who cared for the wounded soldiers around the clock. She worked for 2 months at a makeshift outdoor clinic at an underground hospital. She and the other nurses became known as the Angels of Bataan. When U.S. forces were overrun in May 1942, Mrs. Manning was one of the 77 military nurses among the 4,000 people taken prisoner. The POW camp was built on the grounds of Manila's Santo Tomas University and run by Japanese civilians. The prison camps had no showers, beds, or kitchens, and a single toilet shared by hundreds of people. The nurses persevered, maintaining strict military order among themselves, always wearing their uniforms and always caring for the sick, even as prisoners of war themselves in a POW camp. Early in 1944, the Japanese military took control of the camps and conditions deteriorated. Dozens died of starvation. The nurses suffered many of the same illnesses that afflicted the rest of the prisoners in the war. They survived on 2 watery bowls of rice per day. She endured beriberi, dengue fever, malnutrition, and in the years after her imprisonment, lost all of her teeth. Though ailing and undernourished, the nurses continued to care for the sick and dying in the prison camp. Finally, on February 3, 1945, the U.S. Tank Battalion broke through the gates of Santo Tomas as the rescued prisoners sang, "God Bless America." Mrs. Manning and the other nurses were awarded the Bronze Star Medal and a Presidential Unit Citation. In 1943, 2 Hollywood movies were made about the heroic nurses of the Philippines. Cry Havoc was one, and So Proudly We Hail the other. But the real-life Angels of Bataan were almost forgotten after they were captured. In a 2004 interview, Mrs. Manning reflected on her sense of duty while living under those horrible conditions. "I had a job to do," she said. "I was a nurse."